Now, civil society groups are calling on the government to amend intellectual property laws to make medication for COVID and other life-threatening diseases more accessible. The Fix the Patent Laws campaign is a coalition of about 40 civil society organizations and patient groups. About 100 people marched to the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition today, some carrying white crosses in commemoration of people who lost their lives because they couldn't access life-saving medication due to patent laws. For more on this, I'm joined now by Teboho Tenyane. He's the THC chairperson in Gauteng. Very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us, Teboho. First of all, just take us through your march today, the intent.
Okay, thank you once more and good evening to your viewers. So the march today was to also urge the South African government to now act, to now use their political will, to now speak to these intellectual property laws, because these intellectual property laws can also act as obstacles to accessing life-saving medications and technologies, because they protect manufacturers from competition, which keep prices high, and the medication price is very high with a very limited supply. So we're calling upon the South African government to really act on that. They've talked about them doing that in the World Trade Organization, also with India's proposal in the international stage. But when coming back to South Africa, they're not really acting on what they said on the international stage. So we were there today to say the white crosses, the coffins, we're commemorating the lives of those who lost their lives because they couldn't access life-saving medication. And also, it's not only to say we are against the government, but definitely we are saying we stand behind the South African government in its effort to ensure that low and middle class income countries are not left behind. So this is why we're marching today to the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition to say, Minister Patel, it is now time for you to take out the bill to the public for public comment, and thereafter let it go then to President Cyril Ramaphosa's desk and let him sign it into law, because these intellectual property laws are a hindrance and a big obstacle in countries such as ourselves in accessing life-saving medications for all.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, because these medicines that you speak of are coming from, obviously, pharmaceutical companies, large companies. It takes about somewhere between $300 million to about $2 billion just to research and develop, a particular type of medicine. Are we then, taking away the incentive for these companies to carry out this research that leads to, the creation of this medication that we need dearly?
Definitely not. I think that's one thing we need to put across. But what we are trying to say is that if these pharmaceutical companies have access to life-saving medication that can save our people, then let governments come together in one stage and agree to say, if this type of medicine is a life-saving medication for our people, then there should be certain laws that are put into place to say your prices can't be higher to a certain extent. Yes, we can issue you with a patent, but your patent must have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, so that we also low-income class countries can also be able to afford such medications. In the Global South, for example, medication costs for life-saving treatment have been one of the highest. Number one, we can speak about cancer medications, life-saving cancer medication. We can speak about ARVs. Remember in the early 2000s when pharmaceutical companies wanted to sell ARVs in higher prices, but because of the fight of civil society and the THC, now we are seeing that now we need to have a reform in these life-saving medications for all. And definitely we are still calling to say, government, we are here, we are behind you. Reform these patent laws that will help save our people. We could have not lost a lot of lives if we had access to this medication. But now, because of patents and these intellectual property laws, they are a hindrance for us in order to get or to have access to these life-saving medications.
Teboho, these laws that you want government to look at and to change, I mean, we're talking about going back to the 70s. And also, I mean, this is not your first march as well as a coalition. Of course, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, except obviously to the big pharmacy companies. Government has not done anything, so far. Do you expect them now to actually maybe listen a bit closely or a bit more because of COVID-19? What are you expecting exactly for them to do?
So the South African government is a very progressive government that listens to its people. So that's why we've been lobbying our government to say, government, we are behind you. We are not fighting with you. We want to be together in this journey when we're wanting to reform laws from 1967 and we are now in 2021. What we're saying is that we want to be behind you. We want to sit you in the table of decision-making and help you with this process. Civil society is not an enemy of government, but civil society is a vanguard that also has a responsibility to also work closely with government to ensure that our people have access to life-saving medications for all, as it is enshrined in Section 27 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So we are saying to them, because of that very section, we need to reform our intellectual property law rights and our patent laws in order for our people to access life-saving medications. Until that time, then our people will continue dying.
Teboho,
That's
just a quick one. I mean, we're looking at the pictures when you guys were marching a little bit earlier on, and you know, I'm seeing coffins, I'm seeing crosses, and so forth. Just quickly, if you can just explain to me the symbolism here.
Most definitely. So the coffin that you see in the pictures is a coffin that talks to all the lives that we had to bury. We had to bury our loved ones. We had to bury the people who were very close to us. And then the white crosses are the lives that have been lost during this pandemic and also during other things that have been happening, other diseases, that if we had the right laws in place, then our people would not have died. But we could say today, Teboho could still be alive because he had access to this life-saving medication. So the symbolism of both the coffin and the crosses was we were commemorating all the lives lost. And we are also saying to Ibrahim Patel to say, Minister, these people lost their lives because it is your very department that does not want, even today, we were there on the 18th of March this year. Even today, our people are dying because your office does not want to take out the bill for public comment. And if it goes out for public comment, civil society can then contribute. And then we can then move to say, okay, this is what civil society is saying, this is what government is saying. How do we then reach a common ground that will then be beneficial for its people? Pela, you must remember they said South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And Section 27 of the Constitution gives us the right to access to quality, comprehensive health care.
All right, Teboho.
So that's where we are.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Teboho Tenyane.